Man, people are just head in the sand about stuff that's so important. People get tired of hearing it from me. Um, so I grew up in an area that's called the Cancer Center of California, and we would play on the Selby slag pile. It was rock that was broken into little pieces. Now, I've done videos here and I've shown the different kinds of slag, okay? Some of them are toxic with heavy metals, the others are not. And the faders out there, they have it all over their property. And he tried to tell me, oh, it came from the Brown mine. And so I had to show him. I said, no, you see, this is not from the Brown mine because I am extremely familiar with this material. I grew up with it. And he didn't know that there was two different ones. And they did a very thorough cleaning out there to get rid of the fucking evidence. This is what happened. I go to Fish and Game, and I'm going to get my license. And I said, by the way, I'd like to, who's in charge here today? So they point him to this gal. She comes over, real friendly and helpful, helped me get my license. And I said, well, the reason I asked for somebody in charge is I have something I want to talk about. I said, now the number 2 site on the Superfund cleanup list was fucking Tormey, California, the Selby slag, okay? They told those people that live there, you have like 24 hours to get out of your house, and then they bulldozed them. That's how bad it was. They didn't want to hear about it. She said, please, I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear about this. This isn't my job. This isn't what maybe you should talk to da-da-da-da-da-da. I tried to convince her that having toxins in the water was harmful to the fish, but still got nothing. And that's just how people are. That's what I've learned. People that go to Congress and testify in front of everybody, it doesn't do any fucking good. Shit's exactly the same the next fucking day. Because they don't want to hear about it. And, some things you can ignore. But the last couple of days I was looking at all the latest data from Greenland. And it is not good. The models are getting more accurate, and the more accurate they become, the more fucking water is flowing off that landmass. So think about this. There is so much ice. I just want you to have some kind of concept you can hang on to when we're talking about ice. So imagine a block of ice so heavy that when you remove that, the land is going to spring up 600 feet. That means when all the ice melts off of Greenland, that island is going to rise up 600 feet. That's how much ice there is there. Imagine this. Okay, so you're outside and you look up and you see a contrail of an airplane flying over. If you can see that airplane, if you can even tell it's an airplane, okay, the ice out in the middle of that ice sheet is higher than that. If you were standing underneath all the ice and looked up, 747 flying over, and you can tell it's an airplane, okay, well, the ice is deeper than that. It's not an insignificant, amount of ice. And it's always been melt rate, because the models sucked. Because every time they came out with a model, it was outdated. And basically what they mainly used albedo as their stick. But the mechanical processes were always ignored. Okay, the moulins, the lakes, the just, I think last year, they found a layer of ice that's about 1.5 meters thick that turns into water every day on the ice sheet, the entire fucking ice sheet. You see, because there should have been more water for what they're seeing with the flows and things, and they thought that there was some missing data somewhere. And that's what they hadn't accounted for, was that the ice would be thawed in the daytime and then frozen again at night. And so it was harder for, that layer became harder to thaw out. It was more constituted ice instead of the flaky, broken, briny kind of like a crystally structure that you can just put your hand through instead of being solid ice. Okay? Well, there's a layer of that. And basically now they're seeing that it covers the entire ice sheet, and that's where the missing data was as far as warming the ice sheet. Because it had to refreeze all of that ice overnight, and that sucks heat out of the system. Albedo. So you get a volcanic eruption that can increase ice flow off that shelf, like, millions of gallons of water a second. And this is the problem. If you take black paint and you painted a giant 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 foot square, or if you laid out a black piece of plastic, well, let me put it this way. They drilled, because they were experimenting with, can we stop this? Black tarp versus white tarp. And they put a white tarp out and they put a black tarp out. Okay. But the white tarp was significantly thicker when they came back and checked on it. And of course, the dark, it's plasticky thing, but was slower. But that didn't tell the story. It didn't tell the story at all because of the way surface objects act on melting ice that's that thick. So the telling one was they drilled a hole. It was 70, 80 feet, something like this. Mainly because of where they were and that it was hard to do, okay? So just as an experiment, and they stuck a probe down there, and the probe was basically sitting on the surface on a tripod, and they were going to come back and check melt rates. And when they landed, actually before they landed, they saw that that entire fucking probe had been melted out of the ice. It was laying on the surface like a garden hose, like this. The ice had gone down, exposing the hose. So it's weird how ice acts and melts. We're not, people didn't want to study ice. That was bad news. This is what we end up with, is here we are in 2024, finally getting answers to questions that we didn't know. And it's worse than we thought. It's way worse than we thought. People go, oh, well, because they're all, they saw an experiment with an ice cube in a glass, and they think, oh, well, that ice is floating. And I have to remind them, yeah, but you see, at one time, that ice was on land. So yeah, when as its buoyancy level was reached, it was racing sea level until it equaled out. So yeah, when you push that off the hill down in here, yes, it does affect everything. The whole system is based on the speed of that fucking glacier. When Larsen A and Larsen B went, the glacier that was behind it sped up by a factor of 20. So instead of a foot, it was now moving 20 feet a day. And to this day, it's still doing that. Because Larsen A and Larsen B, they formed the moulins, they formed these karst lakes that are ice. melted ice, and the entire surface you could see of that ice sheet was covered with these little lakes. And the scientists always said it was going to be 50 years. I need to make sure people hear me on this. They always say 50 years, okay? And when you hear that, yeah. It literally shattered into pieces and flew out into the fucking South Atlantic. It was fucking nuts. The Arctic Ocean was now, filled with the debris from this thing. And the glacier just started running now. There was nothing to hold it back, no dam whatsoever. And that's what they're worried about with Thwaites. They're not worried about Thwaites breaking up. They're worried about the glacier that's behind it. And all of these things have knock-on effects. They're self-enforcing. And, you can't continue to pour fresh water into the North Atlantic where you have that, the ice the salt being squeezed out of that water and having that heavy water flow down, right? It goes all the way down the Agulhas. It goes down to the tip of Africa. And you can only add so much fresh water to that area before it's going to cause problems. The turbidity between the salt water and the fresh water is how the whole fucking system works. And you have to remember that the Gulf Coast current crosses right the fuck over the top of it. And so you got a lot of action going on there. And both of those currents could be affected, and we have no idea what's going to happen at that point. England could have 30 feet of ice build up in just a few years. I mean, it could be, we have no idea what could happen. None. We have no idea what's going to happen. And we're all headed for this. We're headed for this fucking collision. My great granddaughter and my grandson, these are the people that are going to be affected by what's coming. And I want them educated about it. They don't want to hear it either, though. Nobody really wants to hear it. 70% of the population of the planet lives along coastal areas. Like, do people not understand that $20 million home you bought in Florida sitting on a canal so you could have your yacht there, that's going to be under 22, 23 feet of fucking water? Maybe even more. They're saying like 9 meters. So that's how much water, if Thwaites goes, that's how much water is going to be over your fucking dock. Your property, right now your property is worth something, but how long would you hang on to something that you knew, without a doubt, 100% was going to be underwater soon? Like within the next 50 years. How long does your home hold value? I talked about this in another video. There's going to come this clicking point where now, and it's going to be like a fucking real estate explosion all over the world, that people are going to be trying to dump these properties that they now realize are going to become just garbage, no longer worth money. What date is that? I asked people, and nobody's willing to make a guess at it. Yes, I do torture myself sitting around thinking about this all the time because I want to know. I want to know. Yeah, it's important to me to know. They're learning more about how the ice really works, and the fucking numbers come out worse every time. And the more accurate they get with the models predicting melt rates, the worse it looks. So, it's going to happen. We're in the middle of a feedback loop with the entire upper part of our planet with the permafrost. That's not going to be stopped. Humans are fucking puny when it comes to areas that big. Look at that area from space. What do you think humans are going to do? Give me a break. It's fantasy, complete fantasy. Some fucking oil executive thinks up that we've got 50 years to technically solve this problem. That's fucking insanity. It's going to melt. We are going to have to adapt. That's it. And the longer that we allow these fucking hillbilly thinking fucking politicians who are in the pockets of big oil to tell the world that we've got 50 years before we need to do anything, you know what I mean? The more dangerous situation becomes. Year by year, not decade by decade right now. It's year by year people are noticing a difference in climate change in their areas. People are going, we've never had a tornado here ever recorded ever, and we had 3 this year. What does that fucking tell you? The amount of flooding that's happened, okay? Minnesota, fucking flooding like crazy. Everybody always thought that the Northeast would be cold. People didn't prepare for flooding. It's just so sad that people want to stick their head in the fucking sand. That's what they want to do because they don't want to know. If what I'm saying is the truth, and unfortunately, yeah, it's 100% accurate. That's what bothers me. And that's I have when I talk about this, I have nothing but terrifying news, right? That's why I tell people, you shouldn't subscribe to my channel because I don't make content for people. I don't need or want to be entertaining. This is so I can share certain videos and certain ideals that I'm committed to. I have certain, responsibilities, I feel. Although they may have already been met, I don't know. I don't really, when I want to, if I talk about reality, it's never good. It has to be depressing for people that watch my videos all the way through, especially if you go ahead, go check it. Anything that I say, you go check it. I don't open my mouth unless I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I will not orate or fucking bloviate on a subject that I do not know or am not familiar with. And everybody knows who's been here for the last 15 to 18 years know that I constantly fucking talk about ice. Because that's the non-stoppable, absolute coming for our fucking ass problem that we cannot do anything about, okay? We can produce more energy, and everybody can have air conditioners, and if the world heats up, okay, we can air condition everything, which is what's going to happen. But you can't do anything about water rise. You can't build a dam around every shoreline in the world. This can't be done. People laughed at me 20 years ago when I did a video on YouTube when it first got started about putting a dam across the Golden Gate, a water retention system, you know what I mean, like they do in some areas in Europe that have a lot of water. And they laughed. They thought I was stupid. But then you look at, okay, when all the ice melts, it's going to be 560 feet minimum. 560 feet minimum. So we're not talking about 1 glacier and 9 meters. We're talking about all the ice melting. That's going to happen. Now that might take 500 years. Depends. This permafrost and the methane, that's something that, because they don't include it in the models, I can't get real data from any source that, has been doing the experiments. All they know is that it's increasing. They've taking pictures of methane blooms from the fucking space station. But I can't get any numbers on it, but it's not included in the models, and it's 25 times effective as a greenhouse gas. So what do you think's going to happen? Okay, Greenland's going to fucking melt. Now, it may only take 20 years for enough ice to melt to really affect the world. And again, it might take 200 years for the entire island to melt. But you see, what they're finding out now is the ice causes melting, and melting causes ice. It's another reinforcing system. And yeah, it's not good. It's not good. All of those people in Florida that own those condos and those homes, the richest areas right now, those fuckers are trying to gentrify the middle part of Florida that they know is going to be high enough to be good for another 50 years. But I think they're fucking up. I think the models are wrong. I think the models are wrong. And not only are their models wrong, but they always talk about this is what it would look like if the ice melted from Thwaites Glacier. But they don't talk about a fucking hurricane coming in because it's hotter. That's why the ice is melting. And now you got more moisture in the air. And now the water's fucking 6 feet higher, 9 feet higher. Now what's going to happen? When you have a fucking another 9-foot tidal surge. You see, they don't talk about any of the actual reality. This is what's going to fucking happen. It's always little maps and shit trying to make you think that, oh, that's not so bad. Not going to affect me. I live over here. And then people bitch because, electric cars are being mandated. Well, it should have happened 50 fucking years ago. Sorry. Okay? You wanna operate a gasoline car? Okay, build yourself a fucking race car and go join a racing league. No one's going to stop you from doing that when we start trying to mitigate greenhouse gas because it'll be insignificant. But you can't have 50 million fucking people driving around and carbon dioxide manufacturing machines. We just can't have it. People are so stupid, really. Because you know why? Either they think it's not going to affect them. They're so fucking crazy thinking that it's not going to affect me. It's all the way over there. Listen, it's one fucking world now. Trade, commerce, okay, intellectual property. I mean, everything's tied together worldwide. Something happens over here, and all of a sudden you can't get your fucking hamburger bun. Or the fucking bike tires you need are no longer available. You know what I'm saying? Everything that you have to fucking deal with in life, from, buying a fucking speaker, okay, to taking care of your lawn, will be affected by fucking climate change. There's nothing in your life it's not going to touch. And now, it was 118 degrees at the Reading Airport this year, which means it was a degree or two higher up here on the hill where I'm at. 163 degree tool measurement outside. 163 degrees. That's too fucking close to 120 for me. I've never seen that. Not in the times that I can remember. All the way, I remember riding in my Uncle Frank's Jeep going up the road to go to the cabins. And I could see a big drop off over here. I'd never seen that before, you know what I mean? I'm freaking out. I remember that like it was yesterday. Yeah, everyone's going to be affected. No one's going to escape. It's going to affect everything about your life. And so, isn't that important enough? Scientists need to be more like me. Tell people the fucking truth. You're fucked. That $22 million home you buy is going to be worthless. And when are you going to decide to sell? And is everybody going to try to sell at the same time? Which means no one's going to want to buy your property. And we'll have a real estate market crash worldwide. Can you imagine the turmoil that's going to cause? See, and again, I tell my grandkids, and my grandkid will know, she'll be told, you don't sell this property up here. We are above full melt level, just. So the entire Sacramento and San Joaquin valleys will become an inland lake. And not just an inland lake, but a turbid lake too, you know what I mean? It's going to be nasty for hundreds of years, most likely. But they'll be growing food here vertically. It'll be too hot, solar radiation-wise, further south, too cold further north. You have to be in a certain sweet Goldilocks zone all the way around the valley of California. Picture that there's a 600-foot zone from 550 or 600 feet up to, 1,000 feet, all the way around. That'll be where prime real estate. What's Florida going to be like? I don't give a fuck if you're going to buy in the middle of Florida that's going to be above water if the weights goes, because that's not going to be the end of it. And first time you have a hurricane, that's it. You see, they always show maps in Florida that are like 9 meters. This is what it'll look like. And it looks pretty fucking bad, but nobody ever talks about 500 feet. Does anybody know what 500-foot altitude is in Florida? There can't be much of that if there is any. And water will be above that a little bit. I think 510 was the only true number that I thought was correct. It was 510 feet, all the ice. So really, that's superfluous. We're talking like 90 feet, 60 feet will be enough to bring about everything that I've said. We don't need it all to melt. And that's going to be way the fuck before 200 years. So what do? See, I could tell people, I could try to say fuck less. I could try to appeal to people so that I could get that message out, but they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't listen. I do this more as a fucking therapy because I know I have some rational, intelligent people here that are just going, yep, exactly. And then they only watch 5 minutes of the video, and it doesn't bother me. I'm not here to create entertainment. This is the fucking truth. And if I don't speak it out, it builds up in me, and I'm like, holy fuck, I see my great-granddaughter playing and having fun, and that laugh she has where she's just screaming in joy at being alive and shit, and I'm like, fuck, man, that's going to stop. By the time she's 35 or 40, the world will be in complete and total fucking turmoil. No idea what's going to happen. China's fucked. China is fucked. If Thwaites goes, China's fucked. Bangladesh, yeah, completely gone. I mean, people don't understand that we're already suffering from the effects of sea level rise. We got people are already having to deal with it, damming up their front door and shit. I mean, it's just, and no one seems to be able to be awake. No one's awake. You know what I mean? Fuck. Okay. I think I got it all out of my system now. But it is serious. Think about that. You're on land in the middle of Greenland, and you look up and you see a 747 that the ice is actually taller and deeper than that in some places on the island. That's fucking crazy. And that the island's going to rise, when all the ice melts, the island's going to rise up out of the crust 600 feet. Wow.